Uber drivers, what's the deepest secrets you've overheard in your car? Took this 19-year-old kid and what I assumed was his GF back to her house on Pride weekend in SF. They made out the whole ride. When I dropped them off, only she got out. He said take me to Castro and 18th. I said really? And he said yeah. I only make out with girls when I'm rolling. Never a dull moment in San Francisco. Former Uber driver here. Picked a girl up, a sweet girl from a bar on a Wednesday night, absolutely hammered. About 10 PM. She got into my car. Apologized for being so drunk and politely asked if we could just drive around a little while. With the windows down. I was prepping for a cleaning fee. Trying to drive and pull a vomit bag out of the glove box. But no. She just did that airplane thing with one hand out the backseat window. She asked me if I had ever thought about dying. To which I replied, yeah, I guess so. That's when she told me that she had cancer. It was in her brain and it was too far gone to consider chemo. I remember my heart just pounding. She told me she was dying and she was going to be okay. Tonight she was celebrating with her work friends who threw her a going away party. She told them she was taking a position abroad. I just didn't tell them that abroad was heaven. Jesus. Ducking. Christ. I turned off my app and cried my ass all the way home. I picked up this young overly affectionate couple that spent the entire trip making out in my backseat and telling each other that they loved each other. Cute. So I drop off the couple and head on my way to pick up my text fare. I hear a cell phone ring in my backseat. Realize it's my previous rides. And pick up the phone to let them know I have it and I'll come back to drop it off. Turns out it was the guy's wife phoning to check in on him while he was on a business trip, which he was thoroughly enjoying with his mistress. One time I was driving a dude for a bit of a long trip. Was gonna take around 25-30 minutes. He wasn't hammered, but definitely a bit drunk. It was late and he must have been feeling a bit down. So he confided in me and asked me for some advice. He told me he's madly in love with his fiance's best friend and he couldn't back out now. He'd been with this girl for years. And engaged for one. Ready to be married in a few months. It was pretty sad to hear. Because it wasn't just your average story. It was filled with a lot of subtle emotional and mental anguish. The guy went through about 5 years of ups and downs with his girl. And found an innocent friend and comfort in the best friend. After a few years, he developed feelings and it was just downhill from there. Felt bad for the guy because he seemed like he was truly in love with his fiancée too. Although he had strong feelings for this friend. He knew that going through with the marriage meant a lifetime of being around the friend and suppressing feelings. But also breaking it off meant that he lost the girl of his dreams. Seemed like a genuinely nice guy. And I hope he's doing okay. Uber passenger here, had a driver tell me he was changing his name to Nilram. Because it was Merlin spelled backward and he was a wizard. Picked up two dudes. They were talking about how they were going to keep hiding their relationship from their wives and children. Pretty messed up stuff. Drove Uber one night. It was pretty tame until I picked up two guys who wanted to go to a strip club 40 miles away. As they requested an Uber Select fare, I was happy to drive that far. $80 100. It took them 15 minutes to get ready and into the car and they seemed cool so I wasn't worried. As soon as we got on the freeway the guy in the passenger seat started asking about Uber driving and things got dark. After a few minutes he started saying shit like what would you do if someone just grabbed the steering wheel and ran the car into the median, and have you ever thought about what would happen if someone in the backseat tried to strangle you while you were driving? I got a little freaked out and tried to lighten the mood by asking what they were celebrating. etc. But the one guy just kept at it. I was happy to get to the strip club and get them the hell out of the car. Bonus was the bouncer at the club gave me $40 for dropping them off there. I never drove Uber again. Duck that. Edit. And my highest rated comment ever was the result of one night of Ubering. Thank you everyone. It wasn't so much weird as it was random, but my first night driving for Uber Lyft I picked up a dude at 2:30 AM that was finishing up a pub crawl. The dude was dressed in a purple dinosaur onishi and was hammered. He got in and started telling me his entire life story and how he came out to his parents and moved across the country the next day. I know this is the opposite of what you asked because I'm a passenger, not a driver. I had an Iraqi driver tell me he was an engineer in Iraq before the first Gulf War and he'd developed a superior means of gilding furniture. Chandeliers etc, which you can imagine was hot in pre-war Husseinville. Well, Uday wanted to go into business with him, but, and this is a direct quote, first Uday wants to be your partner in business. Then he wants to be partner in your wife. Words to live by. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Don't let Uday catch you. I picked someone up here in Memphis and took them to a shady apartment. They came out smelling like some really good kush. I asked them to go back in and get me some. Got paid. Got weed up. And got a new dealer out of it. Once I had an extremely drunk middle-aged couple fight for an entire 30-minute ride. They attempted to bring me into their fight many times. I just pretended like I was deaf and didn't answer when they tried to rope me into it. Just keep driving. Just keep driving. Just keep driving. Two 40-something guys who I picked up from a bar were talking on a phone speaker, and they were trying to make plans with a third guy who was at a party with a bunch of drunk 12th graders. Exact words. One guy in my car asked if there was anyone younger there. Other dude said, dude really? Followed by silence. Then he said, ducking sweet. Not sure as there was missing context, but it sounded like there was younger teenagers there already drunk and these older dudes were going to pick up. My friend Uber's in my hometown. Picked up some really nice girls out on first Friday. They're talking about their plans for next autumn. Guy thinks he recognizes one of them. Turns out to be my younger sister and he tells me all about it. And that's how I found out my little sister was moving to Spain. You should look up Taxicab Confessionals, it's a whole show about this from the 90s. And it's amazing. Also, someone should totally reboot this into Uber Confessionals. I haven't really heard anything too juicy. But so far my favorite was this one. I picked up two guys in downtown LA. From their conversation I gather they just met at the bar I picked them up from and were going home to hook up. One was younger and clean cut. The other was older and rather scruffy. So I'm driving up Main Street to the 101 and the scruffy guy starts talking about how he used to live there in the 90s and it was a whole lot scummier back then. He mentions he used to have an older boyfriend back then. The boyfriend would call the scruffy guy and tell him to walk down to the sidewalk in a tied-off shirt and Daisy Dukes. Then the boyfriend would drive up in his car and the scruffy guy would lean in his window and the boyfriend would ask him how much. And the scruffy guy would get in and they'd roleplay that he was a prostitute and the boyfriend was his John. The clean-cut guy kinda glossed over this and moved the conversation along. But I thought to myself that scenario sounds hot as hell. I picked up a guy from a gay bar and he was noticeably coming on to me. He then confessed that he was one of the founders of a very popular gaming company and offered me $2,000 to come up to his room. He also refused to leave my car unless I kissed his hand. Fun times. Picked up a girl mid-Saturday. She was a bit upset and a little teary and opened up to me. Turned out a business she had started was failing and she was in debt and had turned to stripping on the side to cover the bills. She said the pay was good but she kept getting really sick from all the booze she felt obliged to drink. Part of her job was making guys spend money at the bar. She hated it and felt trapped and kept asking me what I would do in her situation. I'm a guy. So kind of hard for me to answer. Tried to give her the best advice I could think of, like getting the tax office to withhold tax for a while. But couldn't help really. Only thing I could do was end the trip early. Other one was a couple of off-duty cops who didn't want their friends to know they were using it. Uber is still in a legal grey area here. I am not an Uber driver but I have one that was told to me. This driver told me that he picked up his last fare for the day and it did not have a final destination. The dude gets in the car coked out of his mind yelling on the phone. The guy says drive to Vegas. Here. and the guy tosses $500 bucks at him. That is on top of the Uber fare, which apparently was surge pricing. So the guy drives him to Vegas. From Los Angeles takes about 4 hours. The whole time the guy's talking, yelling on the phone to his mom. They get to Vegas and he drops the dude off at some mansion where his mom is outside waiting to yell at him. Apparently the guy forgot about giving him the cash because he tossed another few $100 at him. Got out of the car and split. Never overheard a juicy secret, but plenty of interesting packs. One time I had a group of 3 guys, probably around my age, mid-20s. They seemed nervous, avoided eye contact, and were pretty much silent from the moment they hopped in. I tried confirming the destination, asked how their night was going, etc., but only got muffled mumbling in return. As always, I worked the situation out in my head in a calm, rational manner. Something like, are these guys trying to rob me? Jack my car? Did they just kill somebody? Am I an accessory to murder? Do they have knowledge of the impending apocalypse? But as my paranoia routine winded down, I slowly started to realize what was going on. Between the beads of sweat, occasional jaw clenching, and finally, random giggle outbursts. These kids were tripping, ducking gonads. Once it hit me, I called them out immediately and told them I was cool. They looked so relieved. I started blasting music, some Humphreys McGee I do believe, and they just started geeking out by that point. Fun ride. At the end of the ride, the guy that sat up front tossed me a bag of shrooms. Good times. Picked up a drunk guy on street. Patrick's Day. He was talking about his boyfriend and asked me if he should break up with him for being a money-grubbing whore. He then proceeded to tell me about the 2 dudes he was going to cheat on his boyfriend with that night. Just a weird set of conversations. Not my story, but I had an Uber driver tell me this one, so I hope it counts by proxy. Uber driver George is doing Uber pool one night in Austin, where you pick up multiple people en route to the destination. First, girl number 1 gets in the car alone and sits in the backseat on the passenger side. Then a couple, guy and girl, comes, and there's not enough room for everyone in the back. So girl number 2 sits behind the driver and guy sits up front. The 2 girls in the back start chatting and seem to be getting along well. Girl number 1 asks what they're doing tonight, and girl number 2 says, "Oh, me and my boyfriend Josh are going out to celebrate. Josh works at XX and just got a promotion." At this point, George notices Josh is crouching down in his seat and looking guilty. Then, girl number 1 says, "That's funny. My boyfriend is also named Josh and works at XX. I wonder if they know each other." Then girl number 2 starts tapping her boyfriend on the shoulder and bugging him to turn around to meet girl number 1. At some point Josh can't avoid the introduction anymore and is forced to turn around. He does so with a look of utter horror on his face, as it slowly dawns on both girls that they're dating the same Josh. Anyway, both girls start screaming and kick Josh out of the Uber. Not sure what happened after that, but you can bet Josh never took Uber pool again. Not an Uber driver. Work for a smallish cab company. We have a contract with schools in the area to transport seniors to this graduate program so they wouldn't drop out. Usually criminal or bad behaved kids, etc. Anyway, I was assigned to this one kid from sophomore year. Heard some ducked up things from other students about him, like he ducked a guy in public, ducked a dog, so on. He was usually quiet. Most conversations I started with him kinda just ended from awkward silence or him just ending it. One year he starts being more confident around me. Told me Lou would have ducked up things. Mom abused him. Stole college money. Great few years ago. Most bad things I heard about him were he was gay and he said that was about that. etc. After that he tells me about his drug endeavors, I guess you'd call it. He actually gave me some seeds for growing for free. Last year I knew him, he was jetting with a lot of girls from the school. Every day had me drove him with different girls. Eventually stuck with one. Told me about how some of these innocent girls did some crazy shit with him. disappeared halfway through the year. Overheard from other drivers he killed himself. My husband had a couple that broke up in the backseat of his car while driving for Uber. The woman made fun of her boyfriend's ex and was talking about how she had bad teeth. The boyfriend said her teeth were fine and that she was being really judgy. She then asked him if he was still in love with his ex. He thought for a moment, said yes, and she started crying. There was some kind of confusion about where to get dropped off since she just wanted to go home and he wanted to go somewhere the opposite direction. Super awkward for my husband. Not so much a dark secret, as much as a potentially dark situation. Driving around waiting for pings. Get one at a popular bar. Pull up and a young woman flags me down. Gives me her name. Asks for mine. I'm her ride. Easy enough. There's a guy with her. They are both quite drunk. She says goodnight to him and gets in the rear passenger side door. Homeboy isn't having it. Decides he's coming with. Starts trying to convince her. Despite her saying she has work early. Wants to get to sleep. But he's not taking no for an answer. It's getting a bit weird as he's getting more and more pushy aggressive about it. To the point that she's clearly uncomfortable. I step out of the car and say over the top of the car, hey man. If she says you're not getting at the car, you're not getting in the car. He looks over at me with hate in his eyes. I'm a bit tense. Not knowing this kid's deal. He slams the door. Walks away. Talking shit as he goes. Really? Talking shit as you walk away? What a hard ass. Get back in the car. Girl seems a little more sober after the experience. And is shaken up over it. Take her back home. Make sure she gets in safe. Not as scary or as weird as it could have been. But the dude gave off a bad vibe and I'm glad he took the hint and ducked off. Picked up a girl who had to go to work across town. Her boyfriend and her were arguing in the parking lot as I was approaching. Girl gets in my car and she's worried she's not going to get to work on time and she would be fired if she was late. Get about a block away and my phone rings. I answered and tried to get it off my Bluetooth stereo to no avail. The person on the other line was her BF and he said he wanted to apologize about his GF and that I shouldn't listen to her because she was a crazy BTCH. She heard all of it and didn't say a thing. Very awkward. Finally get her to work and she asks me to stay in the parking lot as she goes in and quits her job. She gets back a few minutes later and on the way home tells me that her boyfriend once broke her arm in an argument and that he was going to be very mad at her and she was worried about going back home but to take her there anyway. Ended up dropping her off and calling non-emergency but I have no clue if anything ever happened with it. A few weeks back I picked up a woman from UT Arlington and drove her to the FW airport. We got stuck in traffic heading to the airport so we started chatting about this and that. We started talking about our jobs and it turns out she was affiliated with an WNBA team from the Midwest. Her team had just beat the Dallas WNBA team by a sizable amount and was quite happy to share some info with me. She said she loved her job. Traveling. Doing something she loved. Basketball. But she hated some of the players on the team. Divas. She called them. Said a few players treated her like shit and as a personal assistant. Which she claimed she was not. As long as those bitches keep winning, I can deal with them. They are such sore losers. She laughed at that. I just chuckled along with her. Afterwards, I admitted that I didn't even know Dallas had a WNBA team, let alone any other major city. She smiled and told me she hears that a lot in all the cities she visits. So, while not the craziest thing ever, I still thought she was a memorable rider. Kind of cool, I think. Edit. Affiliated is more vague than what I had before and removed city.